The first time I realized something was wrong, we were already at 35,000 feet. Not turbulence, not a warning light. It was the silence. I've been a pilot for over 12 years. Silence in a cockpit is never truly silent. There is always a hum, a vibration, a quiet reassurance that the machine is alive. That night, it felt like the plane was holding its breath, and so was I. Before I tell you what really happened on that flight, take a moment to subscribe to Dark Truth, where I share real psychological horror stories that stay with you long after they end. What I'm about to tell you is not easy to live with, and once you hear it, flying will never feel the same again. I work as a captain for a major airline. You've seen our logo. You've trusted us with your family. You've probably flown with us and slept peacefully while I sat in the cockpit. This story is why I don't anymore. It was a night flight. International, long haul, the kind where time stretches and your mind drifts. I had flown this route dozens of times. Same departure gate, same flight plan, same procedures. Everything was routine. My first officer was younger, quiet, competent. The kind of guy who followed checklists like religion. We exchanged the usual small talk while boarding finished. Weather was clear. Aircraft was clean. No technical issues. Passengers settled in. Cabin crew did their checks. The door closed. That sound, the heavy, final thud of the cockpit door locking behind us, I remember feeling a strange discomfort when it shut, a tightness in my chest. No reason, just instinct. I ignored it. Engines spooled up. We pushed back, taxied, took off smoothly into the night sky. City lights fell away beneath us like dying stars. At cruise altitude, the autopilot took over. Cabin lights dimmed. Passengers slept. The world outside the windshield turned into endless black. That's when I noticed the first thing. The cockpit clock was wrong. It was off by exactly 6 minutes. Not frozen, not broken, just behind. I mentioned it casually. My first officer shrugged, said maintenance probably forgot to sync it. I reached to adjust it. The moment my fingers touched the control, the clock jumped forward on its own. 6 minutes. Perfectly aligned again, I pulled my hand back, slowly. Neither of us spoke. A few minutes passed, or maybe more. Time felt strange, stretched. Then I heard it, a sound behind us, soft, almost polite, like someone shifting their weight. I turned my head, expecting to see the cabin crew standing at the cockpit door. No one was there. The door was sealed, locked. The indicator light confirmed it. I laughed it off, told myself it was fatigue. Night flights played tricks on your mind. But then, my first officer spoke. Did you hear that too? We sat in silence after that. The sound came again, later. Always subtle, always behind us. Never loud enough to trigger alarms or protocol, just enough to make your skin crawl. I checked the cabin intercom, asked the lead attendant if everything was okay. Her voice came back steady, calm. Everything's normal up here, Captain. Passengers are asleep. I asked if anyone had approached the cockpit. She paused. No, sir. That pause stayed with me. Minutes turned into hours, or at least they should have. But the flight timer wasn't moving correctly anymore. It wasn't broken. It was looping. Every time it reached a certain point, it jumped backward. Always 6 minutes. I felt a headache forming, a pressure behind my eyes, like something was pressing inward. That's when I started to feel watched. Not from the cabin, from inside the cockpit. The air felt thicker, warmer, like breathing through fabric. The overhead panel lights dimmed slightly, then returned to normal. My first officer rubbed his temples. "Captain, do you ever feel like we've flown this part already?" I looked at the navigation display. Same waypoint, same heading. We hadn't passed it. We'd reached it before, multiple times. I requested a position check from air traffic control. No response. Tried another frequency. Nothing. The radio was working. I could hear static, but no voices. That's when the smell started. Cold air. Not smoke, not electrical, just cold. Sterile. Like a hospital corridor at night. I felt it on my neck, behind me. Very slowly, I turned my head. The jump seat was empty, but the seatbelt was buckled, tight, as if someone had just been sitting there. My heart started to race. I felt sweat trickle down my spine. My first officer was breathing faster now. "Captain, I think there's someone..." He stopped. Mid-sentence. Just stop. I turned toward him. His eyes were open, staring forward, unblinking. "Hey," I said quietly. "Talk to me." No response. I reached out and touched his arm. It was ice cold. He exhaled slowly, then whispered something so softly I almost missed it. "It doesn't want us to land." My mouth went dry. "What doesn't?" He didn't answer. The cockpit lights flickered just once. Behind us, the sound came again, closer. A slow inhale. Not mechanical, human, but wrong. Too deep, too patient. I forced myself not to turn around. I knew somehow that if I did, something would change. The flight controls began to feel heavy, resistant, like the plane was fighting me. Autopilot disengaged without warning. I grabbed the yoke. The plane held steady, but I could feel it, a pressure, as if another set of hands were resting over mine, guiding, correcting. I whispered without thinking, "We're just passing through." The pressure eased slightly. That's when the cabin lights went out. Not emergency lighting, not a system failure, just darkness, complete. The intercom crackled, static. Then a voice, not the cabin crew, not my first officer. It sounded like me. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for choosing us." I felt something brush my shoulder. I finally turned around and realized the jump seat wasn't empty anymore. Someone was sitting there, not clearly, not fully. It was shaped like a person, but the edges didn't stay still, like heat distortion, like a reflection on dark glass. It wore a uniform, my uniform. Same epaulets, same insignia, same worn crease on the sleeve that mine had. Its face was unfinished. Features suggested, not defined. A mouth that never quite closed. Eyes that reflected the instrument lights, but didn't blink. It leaned forward slightly as if curious. I couldn't breathe. My first officer finally moved. Slowly, mechanically. He turned his head toward the thing behind us. Recognition flashed across his face. Terror followed. "We're late," the thing said. Its voice came from everywhere at once. From the radio, from the walls, from inside my skull. "Late for what?" I whispered. "For the part where you stop pretending this is your plane." The flight controls pulled hard to the left. I fought them. The plane corrected itself back to the original heading. not my correction. I checked altitude, airspeed, fuel, all normal. Too normal. Like the instruments were lying to me. The navigation screen blinked. The route ahead redrew itself. Endless. No destination. Just a straight line into black. "How many flights have you done, Captain?" the thing asked. I didn't answer. It tilted its head. Hard to keep track, isn't it? They all blur together after a while. The smell of cold air intensified. My breath fogged slightly. The cabin intercom activated on its own. I heard muffled sounds, shifting, murmurs, not screams, something worse. Confusion. Passengers waking up in the dark. "Stay calm," the voice said. "They always do better when they don't panic." My first officer suddenly laughed. A sharp, broken sound. "Oh, God," he whispered. "We've been here before." I looked at him. His eyes were wet. "You told me last time," he said to me. "You told me not to remember." "What are you talking about?" I said. He swallowed hard. "Every time we reach this point, you make me forget. You reset it. You let it take someone else." The thing nodded slowly. "A system that works," it said. My heart pounded so hard, I thought I'd pass out. I shook my head. "No," I said. "That's not possible." The cockpit clock jumped backward. 6 minutes. Again. The thing leaned closer. "You don't crash," it said gently. "You never crash. That would draw attention." "Then what happens?" I asked. It smiled. I continue. The cabin temperature dropped further. Warning chimes tried to sound, but died halfway through. The radio burst to life. Air traffic control. My call sign. But the voice on the other end wasn't human. "Maintain current heading," it said. "You are exactly where you should be." The navigation display showed dozens of faint lines branching off our route. Other flights, other planes, all converging into the same endless path. "How many?" I asked. The thing's eyes reflected hundreds of tiny lights, as many as it takes. My first officer began to cry quietly. "They told us the incidents were human error," he said. "Fatigue, stress. They grounded pilots, paid families, buried reports." He looked at me. "But they never grounded the planes." The thing placed its hand on the center console. The metal frosted beneath its fingers. "Machines are obedient," it said. "People are replaceable." A sudden thump echoed from the cabin. Then another, then many. Passengers banging on walls, on the floor, on the ceiling. The emergency lights flickered on briefly. Through the cockpit window, I saw movement. Not outside. Reflections. Figures standing in the aisle, too still, too tall, watching the cockpit door. "Open it," the thing whispered. "Let them see." I clenched my jaw. "No," it sighed. Disappointed. "Then we do it the quiet way." The banging stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. My first officer slumped in his seat. "I don't want to forget again," he said softly. I felt something deep inside me break. "How do we land?" I asked. The thing looked almost amused. "You don't." It gestured to the darkness ahead. "You hand it over, like you always do." I thought about my family, about the thousands of passengers who trusted me, about every flight that vanished from records with vague explanations. I thought about how tired I was. I reached for the controls and stopped. Instead, I disengaged everything. Autopilot, assistance, systems. The cockpit alarms screamed for half a second, then went dead. The plane shuddered violently. The thing recoiled. "What are you doing?" it hissed. "Taking responsibility," I said. The darkness outside rippled. The reflections vanished. The pressure on the controls lifted. For the first time since takeoff, the plane felt empty. The thing began to fade. "You can't stop it," it said. "You're already part of it." "Then I'll warn them," I whispered. The cockpit lights surged back to full brightness. The radio crackled. A real voice answered. The navigation display snapped back to a normal route. My first officer gasped sharply like someone waking from a nightmare. We landed. Normal, uneventful. No reports, no questions. Maintenance found nothing wrong. The company praised our professionalism. They grounded my first officer for stress-related concerns. He doesn't remember the flight. I do. That's why I quit. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because the planes are still flying. The routes are still active. And sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I hear that breathing again. Patient, waiting for another cockpit, another pilot, another quiet handover. So, if you ever hear silence where there should be sound, if the clock jumps back 6 minutes, if the flight feels endless, pray you're not on one of ours. I didn't plan to say anything after that. For weeks, I stayed quiet. I told myself that leaving the airline was enough, that walking away meant it was over. But the silence followed me. At home, at night, when the city noise faded, I would hear it again. That same careful breathing, slow, measured, like someone standing just behind me, making sure I didn't forget. I stopped flying as a passenger. Airports made my chest tighten. The smell of recycled air, the low hum of engines, even the boarding announcements felt wrong. Too familiar, too rehearsed. One night, unable to sleep, I searched for incident reports, not news articles, internal documents, old forums, forgotten aviation boards. Patterns emerged. Flights that landed normally but lost entire crews within months. Pilots who resigned suddenly. First officers grounded for mental health concerns. Cabin crew reassigned, then gone. Always the same routes. Always the same 6-minute discrepancies buried deep in data logs. I reached out to my former first officer. He didn't recognize my name. He laughed politely and told me he'd never experienced anything unusual in his career. Before hanging up, he paused. "Strange question," he said. "Do you ever feel like you've already lived certain days?" The line went dead. That night, I dreamed I was back in the cockpit. Same flight, same darkness. This time, the jump seat was empty, but the door to the cockpit was open. The cabin beyond stretched impossibly long. Rows of seats disappearing into black. Passengers sitting perfectly still, heads tilted toward me in unison. They all wore seatbelts. None of them blinked. I woke up gasping for air, my bedroom ice cold. On my phone was a notification, an email from my old company address. No subject line, just one sentence. "Your replacement is scheduled." I deleted it. But I know deletion doesn't matter, because whatever it is doesn't live in servers or systems. It lives in the routine, in repetition, in people who stop asking questions because everything looks normal. Planes don't disappear anymore. They arrive on time, quiet. And if you ever notice a pilot who looks exhausted before the flight even begins, if the cockpit door feels heavier than it should, if, for just a moment, the plane feels like it's going somewhere it shouldn't, remember this: some flights are not meant to land, and some pilots never stop flying even after they quit. I thought that would be the end. A warning, a confession, something to get the weight off my chest. But horror doesn't end when you speak it out loud. Sometimes that's when it listens more closely. 3 months after I quit, I received my old uniform in the mail. No return address, just a plain cardboard box sitting outside my door. When I came home one evening, I stood there for a long time before touching it. I already knew what was inside. The fabric was neatly folded, pressed, clean, too clean. Pinned to the collar was my old ID badge. The expiration date had been updated. I hadn't worked there in months. Inside the box was a note, handwritten, 6 words. You are still on rotation. That night, the breathing came back louder than ever, not behind me, inside my head. Inhale, exhale, perfectly timed, like a metronome. I tried to drown it out. Television, music, white noise, nothing worked. The sound adjusted, slipping between frequencies, always audible, always patient. At exactly 02:14 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. All I heard was cockpit ambience, the hum, the faint electrical whine. Then a voice, my voice. Before we continue this flight, please remain seated. I threw the phone across the room. The call didn't end. The sound kept playing, echoing softly, until the screen finally went dark on its own. The next morning, I checked flight trackers. One of the old routes was active again. Same departure time, same aircraft model, new crew. I recognized the captain's name. Young, talented, recently promoted. I tried to warn him. I wrote emails, messages, anonymous posts. Nothing reached him. At boarding time, I felt it. A pull, like a hand closing gently around my wrist. The breathing synced with my heartbeat. I knew where it wanted me. The airport. I don't remember driving there. I remember standing at the observation window, watching the aircraft push back from the gate, watching my plane. The uniform in the box was suddenly on my body. Perfect fit. The radio chatter in my head grew louder, clearer. Crew, prepare for departure. I felt proud. That terrified me more than anything. As the plane lifted into the sky, the pressure released. The breathing softened, satisfied. That night, the flight landed safely. No incident, no report. The captain resigned 2 weeks later. The first officer doesn't remember why. And me? I'm writing this because I still have moments of clarity, small gaps between flights, between rotations. I don't know how long they'll last. I can hear the engines now, warming up. If this story cuts off suddenly, if there's no goodbye, then you already know why. So listen carefully the next time you fly. Listen past the announcements, past the engines. If you hear breathing that doesn't belong to you, it means the seat is no longer empty, and someone, somewhere, has just been scheduled. There is one last thing I need to say, because even now, part of me hopes this reaches someone who can still choose not to board. I'm not writing this from my home. I'm writing it from a hotel room near an airport I don't remember traveling to. The curtains are closed, but I can feel the runway lights blinking through them. On, off, like a heartbeat. My phone says it's 02:08 a.m. It hasn't changed in a long time. 6 minutes from now, it will reset. I know this because it always does. The uniform is hanging on the back of the chair, pressed, ready. I don't remember putting it there. On the desk is a printed flight plan with my name on it. Not email, not digital. Printed, old style. The route is familiar. Too familiar. I can hear movement in the hallway outside my door. Slow footsteps, measured, unhurried, crew footsteps. Stopping. Right outside. There's no knock. There never is. The breathing is back. Stronger now. No longer pretending to be distant. It's right beside me. Reading with me. Waiting for me to finish. I've tried to fight it before. You heard how that went. It doesn't punish you. It replaces you. Quietly. Cleanly. That's the part no one notices. That's why everything looks normal. I want you to understand something very clearly. The airline isn't evil. The planes aren't cursed. There's no sabotage, no conspiracy meeting in dark rooms. It's worse than that. It's procedural. Whatever lives up there, it found a system that never stops moving. A system built on schedules, replacements, and plausible explanations. A system where silence is routine. And once you fit into it, you stop standing out. The door handle just turned. I didn't lock it. I never do. In a moment, I'll stand up. I'll put on the uniform. I'll walk out without resistance. I'll feel calm. I always do. Tomorrow, a flight will depart on time. Passengers will board. They'll complain about legroom. They'll fall asleep. They'll trust the voice that comes over the speakers. My voice. And somewhere above the clouds, when the cockpit goes quiet, when the hum feels thinner than it should, when the clock slips back 6 minutes, it will sit behind me again. Patient. Breathing. If you remember anything from this story, remember this. Pay attention to the silence. Because if it feels like the plane is waiting, it is. And it's not waiting for turbulence. It's waiting for someone to take the seat. The door's opening now. I have to go. The hallway light spills into the room. White. Clean. Too bright for this hour. A shadow stretches across the carpet before I see anyone step inside. It's wearing a uniform. Not mine. Older. Outdated insignia. Faded stripes. A style retired years ago. Its face is clearer than before now. Not human, not fully. Like several expressions layered on top of each other. Never settling. Pilots I've flown with. Pilots who vanished. Pilots whose names were removed quietly from schedules. All rotations must continue, it says. Its voice is calm. Administrative. The voice of policy. I stand up. My body moves before my mind agrees. That's how it works in the end. As I step into the hallway, I notice the doors around me are open. Every room identical, every room empty, except for uniforms hanging neatly on chairs. Dozens of them, waiting. We walk together toward the elevator. It doesn't need to press the button. The doors are already open. Inside, the mirrors don't reflect us correctly. Too many figures. Too many outlines standing where there should be only two. The ride down feels endless. The breathing sinks again. Perfect rhythm. In the lobby, no one looks at us. Staff smile. Guests scroll on phones. Luggage wheels click across the floor. Normal. That's the most disturbing part. Outside, a shuttle waits with the engine running. No driver. I step inside anyway. As we pull away, my phone vibrates one last time. A notification from this very page. Upload successful. I don't remember hitting publish. The airport rises ahead of us, glass and steel glowing against the night sky. Runway lights blink. On, off, on, off. I realized something then. This story wasn't a warning. It was a transfer. Every person who listens carefully, every person who imagines the silence, every person who feels uncomfortable when the engines go quiet, you've heard it now, which means it knows you exist. The shuttle stops. The door opens. The breathing fades. Satisfied, as I step out, my name disappears from the screen where this story ends. But somewhere, on a flight departing tonight, a cockpit seat just became available, and someone reading this is already closer to it than they think. I don't feel fear anymore. That's how I know it's almost finished. The terminal is quiet in a way that feels intentional, not empty, controlled. Footsteps echo too clearly. Every announcement sounds slightly delayed, like it was recorded a long time ago and only just pressed play. People move around me, but none of them meet my eyes. They don't need to. I already belong to the flow. At the gate, the aircraft waits with its nose pointed toward the dark sky. The windows are black mirrors. I can't see inside, but I know exactly where everything is. I've memorized this space more times than I'm supposed to remember. The crew gathers without speaking. New faces, nervous smiles, professional posture. One of them looks at me with relief, like they're glad someone experienced is here. I want to warn them. The thought forms slowly, weakly, like a dying signal. But another thought presses over it, heavier, calmer. This is how it's done. We board. The cockpit door closes behind us with that same final sound. Thud. The hum returns. Warm, familiar, comforting. For a moment, just a moment, I notice something strange. The jump seat behind me is empty. No frost, no breathing, just fabric and metal. I almost smile. The engines start. The aircraft comes alive beneath my hands. Everything feels perfect. Then the clock on the panel hesitates, barely noticeable. It ticks forward, then slips back. 6 minutes. A breath touches the back of my neck. Gentle, approving, not threatening. Like a colleague taking their seat after a long absence. Outside, the runway lights blur as we accelerate. Passengers lean back, unaware, trusting the voice that fills the cabin. My voice. We lift off smoothly into the night. Above the clouds, the world disappears. Up here, there are no landmarks, no witnesses, no endings, just routes, rotations, continuity. And somewhere far below, someone reading this will board a plane one day and feel it. That pause, that wrong silence, they'll brush it off. Everyone does. Because the flight will land safely. It always does. And the seat behind the pilot will remain occupied. Quiet, patient, breathing, waiting for the next name to disappear.